Hey, everybody, welcome back to Reason and Theology. Your host, Michael. I wanted to go over a very short clip here from the Amazon Synod, where one of the leaders of the Amazon Synod back in 2019 was interviewed, and he gives some interesting thoughts on the statue that's often referred to as Pachamama. And is, of course, related to that Vatican garden ceremony. Now, I do want to say that, look, I spent a very extensive amount of time recently doing a video on this, so I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. I just simply refer you to that video. I put it in the show notes because there's a lot of confusion on what exactly the image was. Some called it Our Lady of the Amazon, that is the Virgin Mary. Others said it was some depiction of Mother Earth. Others called it Pachamama, including Pope Francis once, who referred to it as Pachamama. Now, there are responses to all of those things that we've done in the previous video, Father Anthony Dragani and I, which again I include in the show notes for you to go and check out, because again, there's a lot of confusion on what exactly this image was, and was it Pachamama? Was it this? Was it that? Go and watch the video for a more detailed explanation. Right now, all I want to do is focus on this clip from one of the leaders of the Synod who tells us what the image was. And by the way, I do want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe button, help this channel grow, trying to grow Reason and Theology. And if you have appreciated and benefited from this channel, or you're new to the channel and you just want to find out more and want to stay in touch, again, hit the subscribe button and also the bell for notifications. That way you know whenever I go live. Now, with that being said, I want to go ahead and share my screen here so that you can see the video clip that we're going to briefly watch together. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about appropriating certain elements in our history, that is, both from the Old Testament and in the New Covenant. The concept of appropriating some elements from non-covenantal traditions, if you will, and then appropriating them for the covenant worship of God. Let me go ahead and again share my screen, enable audio, and let's take a look at this here. Let's see, it's for some reason not pulled up. Let me try it again. See here. All right. Well, doesn't want to pull up. Every time I pull it up, it wants to close. Okay, here we go.
Throughout the month of the Amazon Synod, indigenous people are exhibiting their customs and traditions in Rome. One display in particular is right in front of the Vatican in Santa Maria in Trespotina Church. Father Roberto Rojas, a missionary oblate of Mary Immaculate, is one of the event organizers. He spent more than a decade working with indigenous populations in Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and his native Peru.
Okay, so you hear that. He is, again, a Synod organizer. He has spent a good 10 years in this area. And listen to what his comments are.
He says this exhibition aligns with Pope Francis's Laudato Si.
Pope Francis
says in Laudato Si that everything is connected. For us, men and women, to be human is to be in relationship. So if we are to be in relationship, the indigenous teach us exactly that. They teach we are first in relationship with God, second with nature, and third of all with ourselves.
He says out of all the items present at this exhibition, one item in particular is very symbolic of the Amazon for the people.
This figure is the Virgin Mary of the Amazon, Our Lady of the Amazon.
Did you hear that? He says this figure is the Virgin Mary, Our Lady of the Amazon. And he has some interesting comments to where, as far as where this originated. Listen.
This figure is the Virgin Mary of the Amazon, Our Lady of the Amazon. It's a devotion that started in the indigenous communities. They carved in wood an image of a Blessed Mother who is pregnant. She is the Virgin Mary, and we have called her Our Lady of the Amazon.
Again, it started in the indigenous communities. Some people have been under the impression that, okay, well, if this was Our Lady of the Amazon in the Vatican garden ceremony, this was just something brand new. He's saying this was already venerated by the indigenous peoples as Our Lady of the Amazon. Perhaps not that particular image. The image may be rather new, but the devotion to Our Lady of the Amazon already existed at the very least. And so what he's saying is, in his mind, what they were doing is venerating the Virgin Mary in the same way that we would venerate an icon or something like that. Again, unfortunately, the Vatican severely dropped the ball, because not only did it not explain things very well at that time, it also hasn't explained things well since then. It also has said things that confused people. During the ceremony, it's called Our Lady of the Amazon, but then again, Pope Francis in a private audio calls it Pachamama, and then a representative of the Vatican calls it a representation of Mother Earth. And so, which is it? And there wasn't a lot of explanation here. And that's why a lot of people were significantly confused, understandably so. And again, if you want answers to that in more detail, go and watch the video that I have in the show notes. But what I found interesting was that Our Lady of the Amazon was already a devotion among indigenous people, according to this missionary. And he notes that, again, they were venerating the Virgin Mary. We might perhaps, have some reservations as far as the particular image itself, whether or not that's the best way to depict the Virgin Mary. I think that we could certainly have some questions there. I certainly do. But at the very least, that was their intention. There seems to be zero evidence that there was any kind of intention during the ceremony of venerating or worshiping some pagan deity. So I find this interesting because I haven't really seen a whole lot of people sharing this, and I kind of wonder, why is that? Why didn't they share this? This was put out by Rome Reports, but you didn't really hear a whole lot about that. You just automatically heard that this is a pagan idol, which again, this seems to work against that narrative. Now, what about appropriation of pagan images and things like that? Look, there is a long history, for better or worse, but a long history in the Old Testament and in the New Covenant and in the Catholic Church of taking certain elements from paganism, cleansing them, and appropriating them for Christ. You can see images that were once used as representations of Greek gods that are then used to represent Jesus. That's just one example among many. And this is during a time, by the way, in Christian history where Christians were in the catacombs and there were a lot of martyrs. So they certainly were not intending to be idolatrous whenever they were doing these things. But again, this is something that goes back even prior to Christian history, back to the cult and covenant worship of our God, the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You have, and I intend to actually do a show on this in the future, giving some more details, but you have plenty of instances where the Israelites appropriated some elements from the cultures around them, cleansed them, and then used them for the covenant worship of the one true God. Again, that continued into the New Covenant with Christian liturgies, and especially in the Catholic tradition. It's been our policy to take certain elements from paganism, to cleanse them, baptize them, and use them for Christ. Again, I intend to give some more examples of even the New Covenant instances in another video, so stay tuned for that. But really, this isn't a principle that should be controversial, since it should be really readily recognized by anybody who's really looked into this area. Now, that does have some limits, however. There's only so much that you can appropriate from non-Christian traditions in the worship of God. There's only so much that you can do. You can't appropriate a worship of a pagan god, for instance. You just can't do that. There's no way to bring that into the New Covenant. That's idolatry. That has to be immediately discarded. But perhaps celebrations on particular days or under particular forms and with certain elements, as long as there's nothing inherently sinful in them and nothing inherently idolatrous in them, they could be appropriated by the church for the worship of the one true God, if the church desires to do so. Now, here's another part where it gets a little tricky. Notice I said if the church desires to do so. It's one thing for the church to appropriate some elements of paganism, not the elements that are sinful, that is, and not the ones that are idolatrous and contrary to the worship of God, but those elements that are neutral in nature. It's possible to do that on the church's part. However, it is not up to local bishops or priests to do these things unless somehow the Holy See has given them directives to do that. It's not for, father at your local parish to discard the rubrics of the liturgy and start to say, hey, you know what, we're going to start appropriating this and that from the local culture. That's something else. That would be a liturgical abuse. Even if it's something that the church could do in and of itself as a whole, it's not something that individuals should be taking on to themselves whenever the Holy See has given certain directives on how the liturgy should be. So I do want to make an important distinction there, because just because you can have that cultural appropriation in theory on part of the church doesn't mean that somehow is license for people to start doing whatever they want in the liturgy on the local level. No, absolutely not. And some of those things can go too far. Sometimes people can, under the intention of trying to appropriate things for the worship of Christ Jesus, end up going too far and bringing in elements that they shouldn't be introducing. So here's definitely where we need some guidance from the Holy See in such matters. So with those appropriate distinctions, I hope that this also helps clarify and further substantiate the points that we made the other day. That is Father Giuliani and I, mostly Father Giuliani, in the video that we did on the PACHAMAMA incident, which again is included in the show notes. Now, once again, I want to ask that you hit that like button and the subscribe button especially. And then, of course, hit the bell for notifications so that you know when I go live. Let me see. Let me take a quick look at the chat. Thank you for the super sticker there, CJD. I appreciate that. Rojas says, I was pondering this earlier today. It occurred to me that way before there was an established religion, people worshipped God by offering sacrifices to him. That kind of resembles paganism in a way. Well, of course, sacrifice itself goes back to Adam, right? But particular forms of sacrifice, and other accidental elements that go along with it, those may be, developed especially in pagan cultures. And then some of those elements were appropriated, again, by the covenant people of God in the Old Testament for the cult of the one true God, the worship of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Again, not that sacrifice didn't exist prior to them, but particular forms of it and certain elements surrounding it did come from the nations around them. But of course, God purified them, cleansed them, used the good from them. All true and good and beautiful things belong to God anyway. So it's certainly possible to do that, especially with the concept of the seeds of the Logos, if you will, as Justin Martyr puts it. There's that seed of the word, if you will, in each of these individuals. And we're able to use the good things that come from society and use those for the church, and then, of course, discard the bad. Let's see. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Roka, you said, am I way off? No, I don't think you're way off, but just keep those, extra comments in mind. But yeah, I see where you say, I know it all ultimately points to Christ. Indeed, absolutely. Prince of the Skyline says, distinctions provided. Right. Right. Absolutely. Let's see. Many people reported that Pachamama was actually a demon. I don't subscribe to that necessarily, but what is that based on? Again, go and watch the video that I have in the show notes for more specifics on what Pachamama is. But the idea is that if this was an idol, if this was a veneration of a pagan god, well, according to sacred scripture, the pagan gods are demons. It's both in the Old Covenant and also in the New Testament. So that's in the Psalms and also Paul's epistles. So the demons, come under the guise of false gods. So again, if this was a veneration of an idol, and a false god, then it would be worship of a demon. That's where that came from. But what you need to challenge is whether or not it actually was an idol in a veneration of a pagan god. The answer is actually no, and the evidence shows that that is not the case. Okay, well, let's see. Roka says, I got you. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for that comment too. But anyways, I hope this was helpful. Like I said last time, hit that subscribe button if you appreciated this video and you want to support me. And if you haven't already seen the other video on Pachamama, go to the link in the show notes. It's going to clear up so much. There have been so many people already who said, this really opened my eyes. This really helped me. I haven't heard this from anybody else. Thank you so much. And so a lot of people have found it to be beneficial. So certainly check it out if you're confused about the question on Pachamama and what happened in the Vatican gardens in 2019 with that ceremony. All right, that's going to do it. I'll see y'all later. God bless.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. God bless.
Is it possible that ancient aliens created other ancient aliens? Ancient alien theorists say yes. But then, is it also possible that ancient aliens created the ancient alien theorists? And are the ancient aliens and ancient alien theorists led by the Vatican, headed by the Pope? Ancient alien theorists and certain unnamed Catholic YouTubers say yes.
Tired of Catholic shows that peddle conspiracy theories that sound like something out of an Ancient Aliens episode? Check out Reason and Theology for a more reasonable take.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home, office, or any kind of property anywhere in the world, you're going to want to call Real Estate for Life, and they're going to connect you with a Catholic agent. Now, that agent will donate a portion of their commission upon sale, and Real Estate for Life will donate 75% of that gift to a pro-life organization at no cost to you. Call Real Estate for Life at 1-877-LIFE-US1 or text them 248-431-1440. If you care about the pro-life cause,